Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're tackling something super interesting, groupthink. And we're using the spiritual seek as our guide.
Oh, yeah. The spiritual seek always has a unique angle.
So let's jump right in. How does the spiritual seek define groupthink? In a way that, we can all relate to.
Well, they frame it as this tension between our longing to belong and our inner knowing, that inner truth.
Okay, so it's like
Uh-huh.
we want to fit in, but maybe we quiet that little voice inside us to do it.
Exactly. And that's where this mini personality test they've created comes in. It helps us see how susceptible we might be to groupthink, how it can sneak into our lives.
A self-awareness tool,
Yeah.
kind of, to check if we're letting the group think for us.
You got it. And one statement in this mini test that really struck me was, if everyone else agrees, it must be the right decision. Sounds pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that how we often decide things? If everyone's on board, it's probably a good idea.
Well, here's where the spiritual seek throws a curveball. They point out that just because everyone agrees doesn't mean it's actually correct.
Yeah. Like those times when, I don't know, everyone thought the world was flat.
Exactly. Or those fashion trends we all followed that make us cringe now. The spiritual seek wants us to dig deeper than surface agreement. Are we really thinking for ourselves? Are different opinions allowed, or are we just blindly following along?
Okay, so it's not about never agreeing with the group. It's about understanding why we're agreeing, being conscious of it.
Absolutely. Another interesting statement from the mini-test is, challenging the group's decision would just cause unnecessary conflict. That really taps into our desire for harmony, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
No one likes to be the one stirring up trouble, especially when you like the people you're with.
Right. But the spiritual seek challenges us to consider the cost of staying silent. If we always prioritize harmony over honesty, are we truly contributing? And are we really honoring what the group could achieve?
So a little healthy debate is actually a good thing, according to the spiritual seek.
You got it. Disagreeing respectfully can lead to deeper understanding, more creative solutions, and a stronger sense of purpose.
Now, that's an interesting perspective. I've always been hesitant to rock the boat, but maybe a little rocking is what we need sometimes.
It might be, but it's also important to know how to navigate those disagreements effectively.
And I bet the spiritual seek has some insights on that too.
They do. They offer some really practical tools and techniques, but we'll dive into those in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, cliffhanger. We'll be right back after a short break. Stay tuned. Okay, so we're back and ready to dive deeper into how to actually deal with groupthink. You were saying that the spiritual seek offers some tools for this.
They do. They don't just diagnose the problem, they give us ways to handle these tricky situations.
Okay, so it's like, what can we do about it, not just knowing about it?
Exactly. And one of their key recommendations is developing something they call spiritual discernment.
Spiritual discernment. Sounds kind of mystical. What is that exactly?
Well, think of it as fine-tuning that inner compass we talked about, that ability to sense the difference between healthy conformity and just blindly obeying.
So it's like having a built-in BS detector for group situations. Sounds pretty handy. But how do you actually develop that?
It's an ongoing thing, not a quick fix. The spiritual seek suggests practices like mindfulness, taking time for self-reflection. They have a bunch of resources like guided meditations and journaling prompts to help you tap into that inner wisdom.
It's kind of like they're saying, before you can change the group, you got to change yourself.
Right.
Yeah, I like that. It starts with self-awareness. Figuring out our own biases, our triggers, how we tend to conform. Once we understand those, we can make more conscious decisions about when to go along and when to stand our ground.
This is really making me think. All those times I've just gone with the flow, even when something felt off. Like I didn't want to make a fuss or I second-guessed myself.
That's super common. The spiritual seek emphasizes that we're all prone to groupthink, No matter how independent we think we are, it's a human thing. So what's the antidote? Besides becoming a meditation master, what can we do in those everyday situations when we feel that pressure?
One practical tip they give is simply asking questions. Instead of jumping to agree or disagree, try to understand the group's viewpoint better.
So instead of saying, that's a terrible idea, I might say, help me understand why you think this is the best way to go.
Exactly. By asking sincere questions, you're not just getting information, you're subtly shifting the dynamic, encouraging people to think critically and creating space for different opinions.
I like that. It feels less like confrontation and more like, hey, let's make sure we're all on the same page here.
Right. And sometimes that little shift in perspective is all it takes to break free from the groupthink trap. It allows everyone to step back, to reconsider if they're really on board or just taking the easy route.
You know what? This reminds me of another statement from that mini test. It's important that we all stick together rather than question each other's ideas. Classic groupthink, right?
Oh, absolutely. It highlights that danger of putting unity above critical thinking. The spiritual Sikh believes true unity actually comes from respecting each other's individuality, not suppressing it.
So it's about that balance between being a team player and being, well, a free thinker, which honestly sounds kind of tricky.
It is, and that's where the spiritual aspect really comes into play. The spiritual Sikh encourages us to cultivate qualities like courage, compassion, integrity.
Yeah.
Those help us navigate those gray areas where there's no clear-cut answer.
It's not just avoiding groupthink, it's using those situations to grow,
Yeah.
personally.
You got it. The spiritual Sikh sees these challenges as opportunities for us to become more authentic and empowered.
And hey, maybe by doing that inner work, we can even inspire others to do the same, create a ripple effect.
Exactly. The spiritual Sikh believes that individual transformation leads to collective transformation. It's a pretty inspiring vision. And this mini test is a great starting point, I think.
I'm convinced. Where can our listeners find this mini test? I'm definitely taking it.
It's right on the Spiritual Sikh's website, and they have a ton of other resources too. Articles, guided meditations, all kinds of cool stuff.
Perfect. We'll link to all of that in the show notes. And folks, remember, this isn't about becoming a lone wolf. It's about finding that sweet spot where you contribute your unique perspective while still being part of something bigger than yourself.
Beautifully said. It's about that harmony between individual authenticity and the well-being of the group.
Speaking of harmony, I'm curious, what else does the spiritual Sikh say about how groupthink connects to that deeper, spiritual side of things?
That's where things get really fascinating. The spiritual Sikh suggests that when we give in to groupthink, we're not just making bad decisions, we're actually compromising our moral compass.
Whoa, wait a minute. Moral compass, that's pretty serious stuff.
Yeah.
Are they saying groupthink can make us, less ethical?
That's exactly what the spiritual Sikh is suggesting. They say that when we silence that inner voice, that gut feeling, just to fit in, we risk betraying our own values. It becomes easier to justify things we might normally think are wrong.
So it's like trading our integrity for a sense of belonging. That's a tough one to swallow.
It is. But the spiritual Sikh isn't trying to shame anyone. It's more about waking us up to this idea. They want us to see that groupthink goes beyond just psychology. It affects our connection to our true selves, our ability to live by our values.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. It's deeper than just making good choices. It's about becoming more, conscious, aware of ourselves.
Exactly. The spiritual Sikh believes that by understanding groupthink, we can make better choices, but also contribute to a more ethical world.
That's a powerful thought. But let's be honest, standing up to a group can be scary. What does the spiritual Sikh say about those times when we know what's right, but we're afraid to speak up?
They talk a lot about developing moral courage. And it's not about being fearless, it's about acting on your values even when it's hard.
So it's like bravery isn't not being afraid. It's doing the right thing even when you are afraid.
Exactly. And the spiritual Sikh gives us practices for building that courage. Things like meditation, affirmations, even just connecting with others who share our values.
So finding that inner strength, but also finding support.
Right. And remember, even small acts of courage can make a difference. It might be speaking up at work, questioning a tradition that's harmful, or even just not participating in gossip.
It's about choosing integrity over conformity, even in those little everyday moments.
Exactly. And those choices, they ripple outwards. They can inspire others to do the same.
Wow, this has been such an eye-opening deep dive. Thanks for walking us through the spiritual Sikh's take on groupthink. It's definitely made me think about my own patterns, how I can show up more authentically, more courageously.
My pleasure. I really encourage everyone listening to check out that mini test from the spiritual Sikh and explore all their resources. It's a worthwhile journey.
Absolutely. We'll have all those links in the show notes. And hey, if you've experienced groupthink or have tips for breaking free, let us know. Share your stories in the comments.
Let's keep the conversation going.
Yes. And that's a wrap on another deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay true to yourselves, and keep diving deep.